Jake Rodriguez sat in the dark corner of the bar on Europa Station and stared at his empty glass. The neon lights outside cast purple and blue shadows through the dirty windows. 3 years had passed since the Battle of Titan, and he still woke up every night hearing the screams of his squadron. Earth had sent 12 ships that day and only 2 came back. Jake flew one of them, but he never felt like a survivor. He felt like a failure. The cantina smelled like cheap alcohol and engine fuel. Alien traders and human drifters filled the smoky room. Most ignored Jake, but some recognized him from the wanted posters. Not for crimes, but for prize fighting. He made his living now beating people up in illegal matches across the outer colonies. It paid enough to keep his ship running and his belly full. That was all he cared about anymore. Jake Lightning Rodriguez, a familiar voice said behind him. Still drinking alone, I see. He turned around and saw Amy Hayes walking toward his table. She wore the blue uniform of Earth Defense Force, but without the shiny buttons and medals. Her red hair was shorter than he remembered, and she looked tired. They had flown together before Titan when the world still made sense. Amy Sparrow Hayes, Jake said, and tried to smile. What brings you to this lovely place? She sat down across from him and ordered 2 drinks from the robot bartender. I came looking for you. Earth Command has a job. Jake laughed, but it sounded bitter. Earth Command threw me away after Titan. They said I was too dangerous to fly with regular pilots. Now they want me back. Amy slid a datapad across the table. The screen showed a massive space station that looked like a metal city floating in space. Bright lights covered its surface and ships moved around it like insects around a lamp. This is Shadaloo Prime. Ever heard of the Galactic Combat Federation? The alien fighting tournament? Jake picked up the pad and scrolled through the information. Rich aliens beat each other up for prizes, while everyone else watches. What does that have to do with me? Every 10 years they hold a special tournament. Winners get more than money. They get access to alien technology that could change everything. Weapons, shields, faster ships. The kind of stuff that could make Earth strong again. Jake put down the pad and looked at Amy. Her eyes were serious, and he could see she believed what she was saying. You want me to enter this tournament and win alien superweapons for Earth? Do you know how crazy that sounds? Crazier than one human pilot taking on the best fighters in the galaxy? Amy smiled for the first time since she sat down. Jake, you were the best pilot in the fleet before Titan. Now you are the best fighter in the outer colonies. This tournament needs both skills. The robot bartender brought their drinks. Jake took a long sip and felt the alcohol burn his throat. Why me? Earth must have other fighters. Better fighters. They have soldiers who follow orders. They have pilots who fly by the book. But they don't have someone who can think fast when everything goes wrong. They don't have someone who can inspire others to fight harder than they thought possible. Amy leaned forward. The aliens think humans are weak. They think we are just another species they can ignore or control. This tournament is our chance to prove them wrong. Jake finished his drink and stood up. I need to think about this. There is something else, Amy said quickly. To enter the tournament, you have to qualify first. There is a match tomorrow night on this station. You have to beat Zangief Prime, the Russian cyborg wrestler. Jake sat back down. He is 3 times my size and half machine. His arms are literally metal, but he fights like a machine too. No creativity, no adaptation, just brute force. Amy smiled again. Sound like anyone you have beaten before. Jake thought about all the fights he had won in the past 3 years. Big aliens, small aliens, robots, ENHANCED, humans. He won because he never fought the same way twice. He won because he used whatever worked instead of what looked good. When is this match? Tomorrow at midnight in the underground arena. Winner gets a spot in the tournament. Loser gets nothing. Amy stood up and put money on the table for the drinks. I will be there watching. So will representatives from Earth Command. If I do this, I do it my way. No orders from Earth Command. No interference. I fight for humanity, but not for politicians. Amy nodded. Understood. Just remember why you are doing this. Not for Earth Command, but for all the humans living under alien rules. For all the colonies that get pushed around because we are considered weak, for everyone who died at Titan. She walked away and left Jake alone with his thoughts. Outside the window, he could see cargo ships loading and unloading at the station docks. Most of the crews were human, but the ships belonged to alien companies. The workers followed alien schedules and alien rules. Earth had become a junior partner in the galaxy, and everyone knew it. Jake finished Amy's drink and walked back to his small ship. The Falcon was old and patched, but she flew fast when he needed her to. He had bought her with prize money from his first fights after leaving Earth Defense Force. She was not much, but she was his. That night Jake trained in the ship's small cargo bay. He practiced the moves he had learned in 3 years of underground fighting. Quick strikes, defensive counters, ways to use an opponent's size against them. Zangief Prime was strong, but strength meant nothing if you could not hit your target. The next evening Jake arrived at the underground arena early. The crowd was already gathering around the metal fighting cage. Aliens of every description sat in the stands talking and placing bets. Most looked at Jake and laughed. He was smaller than most fighters, and he wore simple clothes instead of armor or enhancement gear. Zangief Prime entered the arena like a force of nature. His metal arms gleamed under the lights, and his enhanced muscles bulged under synthetic skin. The crowd cheered as he flexed and showed off his strength by crushing a metal bar with his bare hands. Jake stepped into the cage and felt the familiar calm that came before a fight. This was what he lived for now. The moment when everything else disappeared and only the fight mattered. Win or lose, he would show these aliens what humans could do. The match with Zangief Prime lasted only 5 minutes, but those 5 minutes changed everything. Jake used the zero-gravity environment to his advantage, bouncing off the walls while the heavy cyborg struggled to change direction. When Zangief finally grabbed him, Jake used the wrestler's own momentum to send him crashing into the arena barrier. The crowd fell silent as the mighty cyborg tapped out. 3 days later, Jake found himself on a transport ship heading toward Shadaloo Prime. The massive tournament station grew larger in the viewport until it filled the entire view. Cities covered its surface and ships moved between towering docking spires like a constant stream of metal fish. Jake had never seen anything so big that was built by intelligent beings. Amy met him at the docking bay wearing civilian clothes instead of her uniform. Welcome to Shadaloo Prime. Population 12 million on a good day. The tournament brings in fighters and spectators from across the galaxy. They walked through corridors filled with beings Jake had only seen in history books. Tall, blue aliens with 4 arms argued with short green creatures that looked like walking plants. Robots served drinks too, floating jellyfish-like beings, while human traders tried to sell Earth products to anyone who would listen. This place makes me nervous, Jake said, as they passed a group of heavily armed security guards. Too many people, too many ways for things to go wrong. You are not the only human fighter here, Amy said, and led him toward the registration area. Charlie Blake arrived yesterday. Earth Defense Force sent him officially. Jake stopped walking. Storm Blake. The poster boy pilot who always followed orders even when they were stupid orders. The same one. He has been training with the military's best combat instructors for 6 months. Earth Command thinks discipline and proper technique will win the tournament. They entered a huge hall, where fighters from dozens of species were registering for the tournament. Jake saw Charlie immediately. The man still looked like a recruitment poster, with his perfect uniform and confident smile. He was talking to reporters and shaking hands with officials like he was running for political office. Jake Rodriguez, Charlie said when he spotted them. I heard you beat Zangief Prime. Impressive, but this tournament will require more than barroom fighting techniques. Good to see you too, Charlie, Jake replied, still giving speeches instead of throwing punches. Before Charlie could answer, a calm voice interrupted them. Gentlemen, perhaps you could continue this discussion elsewhere. Other fighters are trying to register. They turned to see an Asian man in simple white clothes. His hair was tied back, and his eyes held the kind of peace that came from years of meditation. He moved like water, and spoke like he had all the time in the world. Ryu Nakamura, the man said, and bowed slightly. I represent the Zen Collective. We seek enlightenment through combat and service to others. Jake found himself bowing back without thinking about it. Something about Ryu demanded respect. Jake Rodriguez. I represent Earth in my own way, and I represent Earth officially, Charlie added quickly. Earth Defense Force trained me specifically for this tournament, Ryu smiled. The path to victory is different for every warrior. Some find strength in discipline, while others find it in adaptation. Both are necessary. A woman's voice called out behind them. Is this where Earth's fighters are gathering? I was hoping to meet you. She wore the dark blue uniform of Interpol Space Division with a badge that marked her as a senior investigator. Her black hair was pulled back in a practical style, and she carried herself like someone used to chasing dangerous criminals across multiple star systems. Chun-Li Shao, Interpol Space Division, she said, and shook hands with each of them. I am here hunting war criminals who use tournaments like this to hide from justice. But I am also here to compete. A cop and a fighter, Jake said. That is an interesting combination. Crime fighting requires both investigation skills and combat ability. Many criminals think they can escape justice by hiding in places like this. They are usually wrong. Amy checked her watch. Registration closes in 1 hour. Jake, you need to sign up and get your fighter identification. The registration process was more complicated than Jake expected. He had to provide medical records, combat history, and submit to scans that measured everything from bone density to reaction speed. The tournament officials were thorough and professional, but Jake noticed they spent extra time checking human applicants. They are looking for enhancement. Drugs or illegal cybernetics, Chun-Li explained, as they waited for Jake's results. Some species try to cheat by modifying their fighters beyond natural limits. What about legal enhancements? Jake asked. I saw fighters with obvious cybernetic parts. Each species has different rules based on their natural abilities and cultural traditions. Humans are classified as unenhanced baseline, so any artificial improvements would be considered cheating. Jake's registration was approved, but with conditions. He would be monitored closely and tested randomly throughout the tournament. Any sign of enhancement drugs or illegal modifications would result in immediate disqualification and criminal charges. Welcome to the Galactic Combat Federation tournament, the registration official said and handed Jake a crystal badge that glowed with soft blue light. Your first preliminary match is scheduled for tomorrow evening against Ken Larson of Titan Industries. Jake recognized the name from news reports. Titan Industries was one of the largest corporations in human space, and Ken Larson was their star athlete. He had won dozens of sponsored fighting competitions using the most advanced combat gear money could buy. Great, Jake muttered. A rich boy with expensive toys. Ken is not just rich, Charlie said. He is genuinely skilled. His corporate sponsors gave him access to training programs and equipment that most humans never see. He fights wearing a powered combat suit that enhances his speed and strength within legal limits. That evening Jake explored the entertainment district of Shadaloo Prime. The streets were filled with bars, restaurants, gaming halls, and shops selling everything from weapons to exotic pets. He needed to understand this place better before the fighting started. He found Ken Larson holding court in an expensive restaurant, surrounded by reporters and corporate executives. The man was everything Jake expected. Perfectly styled hair, expensive clothes, and a smile that never reached his eyes. He talked about representing human excellence and bringing honor to Earth through superior technology and training. "Mr. Rodriguez," Ken called out when he noticed Jake watching from the bar, the famous underground fighter. "I look forward to our match tomorrow. It will be educational." Jake finished his drink and walked over to Ken's table. The corporate executives looked nervous, but Ken seemed genuinely pleased to meet his opponent. "Educational for who?" Jake asked. "For everyone watching. They will see the difference between random violence and scientific combat, between desperation and preparation." Ken gestured to his entourage. "My team includes former military trainers, sports scientists, and equipment specialists. We have analyzed every aspect of human combat performance." "That sounds expensive." "Excellence always costs money, but the investment pays off in results." Ken stood up and extended his hand. "May the best fighter win tomorrow." Jake shook his hand and felt the man's enhanced grip strength. "See you in the ring, Ken." Walking back to his quarters, Jake thought about what he had learned. The tournament was more than just fighting. It was politics, economics, and technology, all mixed together. Every fighter represented something larger than themselves. The question was whether Jake could represent humanity better than a corporate champion or a military poster boy. His room was small, but comfortable, with a view of the tournament arena where tomorrow's fights would begin. Jake sat by the window and watched alien ships arrive, carrying more spectators and fighters. Soon the real competition would start, and he would find out if 3 years of underground fighting had prepared him for the biggest challenge of his life. Jake's fight with Ken Larson drew the largest crowd of the preliminary rounds. The corporate champion entered the arena wearing a sleek combat suit that gleamed under the lights. Sensors and microcomputers covered the suit's surface, while hydraulic supports enhanced every movement. Ken moved like a machine designed for perfect efficiency. Jake wore simple fighting clothes and basic protective gear. The crowd laughed when they saw him next to his high-tech opponent. Even the tournament announcers seemed surprised that someone so poorly equipped had made it this far. The match lasted 12 minutes and ended when Jake used Ken's own enhanced reflexes against him. The suit's computer systems tried to predict and counter Jake's movements, but Jake never moved the same way twice. When Ken finally made a mistake, Jake was ready. One carefully timed throw sent the corporate champion crashing into the arena wall hard enough to crack his expensive helmet. "How did you do that?" Ken asked, as medical teams checked him for injuries. "My suit's computer analyzed every fighting style in the database." "Maybe that was your problem," Jake replied. "You fought the computer's idea of me instead of fighting me." The victory put Jake into the main tournament brackets, along with 31 other fighters from across the galaxy. Charlie Blake advanced by defeating a reptilian warrior from the Vega system using textbook military combat techniques. Rue Nakamura won his match through pure skill and meditation-enhanced focus. Chun-Li Xiao dominated her opponent with a combination of martial arts and police training, but other human fighters were not so lucky. 3 had been eliminated in the preliminary rounds, and 2 more withdrew mysteriously before their matches. Amy became concerned when she could not contact the withdrawn fighters through normal communication channels. "Something is wrong here," she told Jake after his victory celebration. "Fighters don't just disappear without telling anyone. I checked with station security and they have no record of anyone leaving." Jake was more interested in preparing for his next opponent, a massive alien wrestler called Balrog Murphy. The creature stood 8 feet tall and had 4 arms that could crush steel. Its species had been fighting professionally for thousands of years, and Murphy was considered one of their greatest champions. "Focus on your next fight," Charlie advised when Amy shared her concerns. Tournament management probably moved the missing fighters to better accommodations. "Corporate sponsors do that sometimes," Chen-Li disagreed. "In my experience, when people disappear during large events, it usually means someone is making them disappear." I have been investigating similar incidents at other tournaments. What kind of incidents? Jake asked. Fighters entering tournaments and never being seen again. Always the best fighters from each species. Always during the biggest competitions. Chun-Li pulled out a data pad showing photographs of missing persons. This has been happening for 5 years across multiple star systems. Jake studied the images. The missing fighters came from dozens of different species, but they all had one thing in common. They were winners. Champions who had defeated opponents considered unbeatable. You think someone is collecting good fighters? Amy asked. I think someone is collecting the best fighters and making them disappear. The question is why? Chun-Li put away the data pad. I need to investigate the lower levels of this station, areas where normal security does not patrol. That night, Jake could not sleep. He kept thinking about the missing fighters and wondering if he was walking into a trap. The tournament felt too convenient, too perfectly designed to attract the galaxy's greatest warriors to one location. He decided to join Chun-Li's investigation. They met at midnight in a maintenance corridor that led to the station's lower levels. Amy insisted on coming along despite having no combat training. Charlie refused to participate, saying they were wasting time on conspiracy theories. The lower levels of Shadaloo Prime were different from the bright public areas above. Dark corridors connected huge machinery spaces where the station's life, support, and power systems operated. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows, and the air smelled like metal and ozone. Someone has been using these passages recently, Chun-Li whispered as they examined footprints in the dust. Multiple people, some walking, some being dragged. They followed the trail deeper into the station's core until they reached a section that was not on any official blueprints. Heavy security doors blocked their path, but the locks had been opened recently. Beyond the doors they found laboratories filled with medical equipment and computer terminals. What is this place? Amy asked. As they explored the empty rooms, Jake found the answer in a side chamber that made his blood run cold. Dozens of glass tubes filled with blue liquid lined the walls. Most were empty, but 3 contained floating human forms. The bodies showed signs of surgical modification, with metal implants replacing natural body parts. They are making cyborg soldiers, Chun-Li said quietly. Taking the best fighters and turning them into enhanced weapons. Computer files revealed the scope of the operation. Hundreds of fighters had been processed over the past 5 years. Their skills and memories were preserved while their bodies were enhanced with alien technology, and their minds were programmed for obedience. Who is running this? Jake asked as he searched through the data. M. Bison Kane, Amy read from a personnel file. Tournament Director and Chief Executive of Shadaloo Corporation. He has been using the tournament to identify and recruit fighters for a private army. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridors. Someone was coming, and they were not trying to be quiet about it. Jake grabbed as many data files as he could carry while Chun-Li disabled the laboratory computers to prevent evidence from being destroyed. They escaped through ventilation shafts, just as security teams entered the laboratory. From their hiding place they watched armed guards search the rooms and examine the broken computers. The guards wore the same uniforms as tournament security, but carried military-grade weapons. We need to get this information to the authorities, Amy whispered. What authorities? Chun-Li replied. Kane controls station security and the tournament officials. The only authority that matters here is the Galactic Federation, and they are probably being paid to look the other way. Jake studied the data files. They had stolen. Kane's plan was bigger than just collecting fighters. He was building an army to control trade routes throughout the galaxy. The enhanced soldiers would be used to eliminate competition and establish Shadaloo Corporation as the dominant power in multiple star systems. The tournament finals are in 3 days, Jake said. Kane will probably make his move then, when all the media attention is focused on the fighting. We need more evidence, Chun-Li decided. Enough to prove Kane's crimes to the Galactic Federation Council. Without proof, This is just accusations against a powerful corporation. They spent the next day gathering more information while pretending to prepare for their upcoming matches. Jake defeated Balrog Murphy using speed and agility to avoid the aliens' crushing attacks. Charlie advanced by outlasting a defensive fighter from the Crystal Worlds in a match that lasted over an hour. But their investigation attracted attention. Jake noticed he was being followed by security personnel who tried to look casual but were obviously watching his every move. Amy's hotel room was searched while she was at the arena, and several items were missing when she returned. They know. We are investigating, she warned Jake. We need to be more careful. The warning came too late. That evening Amy failed to meet Jake for dinner, as planned. When he went to her room, he found signs of a struggle and traces of sedative gas in the air. Amy had been taken, and Jake knew exactly where she had gone. I am going after her, he told Chun-Li when she arrived at his room. That is exactly what Kane wants. You charge into his laboratory, and you become his next test subject. Then what do you suggest? Chun-Li smiled grimly. We get help. There are other fighters in this tournament who have lost friends to Kane's operation. Rue mentioned that his meditation partner disappeared 2 days ago. If we can convince enough fighters to work together, we might have a chance. Jake nodded. It was time to stop investigating and start fighting back. But this would not be a tournament match with rules and referees. This would be war in the depths of a space station far from any help. The only question was whether they could rescue Amy and stop Kane before the enhanced soldier army was completed. Rue Nakamura listened to their story with the same calm expression he wore during meditation. When they finished explaining Kane's operation, he was quiet for a long moment before speaking. My friend Delcine was taken 3 nights ago. I felt his distress through our mental connection before it was suddenly cut off. I have been searching for him ever since. Rue stood up from his meditation position. I will help you rescue your friends and stop this evil. Charlie Blake was harder to convince. He met them in Jake's room and listened to their evidence with growing disbelief. This is insane, he said after reviewing the stolen data files. You want me to believe that the tournament director is kidnapping fighters to build a cyborg army? That sounds like something from a bad science fiction movie. Look at the evidence, Chun-Li insisted. Medical records, financial transactions, construction blueprints for holding facilities. Kane has been planning this for years. Even if this is true, we should report it to proper authorities instead of taking matters into our own hands. Earth Defense Force protocols clearly state that civilians should not engage in unauthorized military operations. Jake grabbed Charlie by the shirt. Amy is not a protocol, she is a person. While you are filing reports, she is being turned into a robot soldier. Are you going to help us or not? Charlie looked at the data files again, and his expression changed. The evidence was too detailed to be fake, and too horrible to ignore. What do you need me to do? Their rescue team grew over the next 12 hours as word spread through the tournament community. A lizard-like fighter from the Vega system joined them after his cousin disappeared. 2 insectoid warriors from the Outer Rim volunteered when they learned their entire delegation had vanished. Even Ken Larson offered to help, despite his earlier defeat. My corporate sponsors want me to withdraw from the tournament, Ken explained. They received threats about what would happen if I continued investigating missing fighters. That tells me we are on the right track. Jake was surprised by how many species were willing to work together against Kane. Old enemies set aside, ancient grudges to rescue their captured friends. Warriors who had spent centuries fighting each other now planned joint operations against a common threat. Kane made one big mistake, Rue observed as they prepared for the rescue mission. He assumed that beings from different worlds could never cooperate effectively. He did not understand that shared suffering creates shared purpose. The rescue operation began during the tournament semi-finals, when most of the station's attention was focused on the arena matches. Jake's match against Balrog Murphy had been rescheduled to allow time for the mission. but he knew the fighting would continue, whether he was ready or not. Chun-Li led the first team through maintenance tunnels toward Kane's main laboratory. Her police training and knowledge of the station's layout made her the natural choice for reconnaissance. Jake and Rue took a second team to the holding facilities where prisoners were kept before processing. They found Amy in a medical chamber surrounded by unconscious fighters from multiple species. Monitoring equipment tracked their vital signs while computer programs analyzed their combat abilities and fighting techniques. Amy was awake but strapped to an examination table with sensors attached to her head. "Jake, you should not have come here," she whispered when she saw him. "This is a trap. Kane knows you are coming." Before Jake could respond, security doors slammed shut and gas began pouring into the chamber. Emergency lighting bathed everything in red, while alarm sirens wailed. Throughout the facility, armed guards appeared at every exit, and Kane's voice echoed from hidden speakers. "Welcome to my laboratory, Mr. Rodriguez. I have been looking forward to adding you to my collection. Your fighting style is quite unique and will make an excellent addition to my army." Jake held his breath and searched for a way out. The gas was some kind of sedative, designed to knock them unconscious for easier capture. Rue seemed unaffected, using meditation techniques to slow his breathing and resist the chemical effects. "The ventilation system," Rue said calmly. "We can escape through the air ducts if we move quickly." They freed Amy and the other prisoners while the gas continued to fill the room. Most of the captives were too weak to fight, but they could move with assistance. Jake helped Amy to her feet, while Rue gathered the alien fighters who were still conscious. The ventilation shaft led to a maintenance area, where they met up with Chun-Li's team. The police officer had discovered Kane's master plan while searching the main computer systems. "It is worse than we thought," she reported. "Kane is not just building an army. He is planning to use the tournament as cover for a massive weapons test. There is an energy cannon hidden in the station's power core that can destroy entire planets." "When does he plan to test it?" Jake asked. "Tomorrow during the tournament finals. The target is Earth's solar system. Kane wants to demonstrate his power by eliminating humanity's home system while the galaxy watches on live broadcast." The revelation changed everything. This was not just about rescuing captured fighters anymore. They were racing to prevent genocide, while trapped on a space station controlled by their enemy. "We need to split up," Jake decided. Chun-Li takes a team to disable the weapon. Rue leads the prisoners to safety. I go after Kane himself. "That is suicide," Amy protested. "Kane has dozens of enhanced soldiers protecting him. You cannot fight them alone." "I don't plan to fight them. I plan to beat Kane in the tournament finals and expose his crimes to the galaxy." Jake checked his equipment and prepared to leave. "The finals are being broadcast live to billions of viewers. If I can get Kane into the arena, I can show everyone what he really is." Charlie Blake volunteered to accompany Jake to the arena, while the others worked on their separate missions. The military officer had finally accepted that following orders was less important than doing what was right. "Just like old times," Charlie said as they made their way through the station's corridors. "Two pilots against impossible odds. Except this time we are not flying ships," Jake replied. "And if we fail, Earth gets destroyed." They reached a tournament arena as the preliminary matches were ending. Thousands of spectators filled the stands, while media crews prepared to broadcast the finals across the galaxy. Kane appeared in the VIP section, wearing ceremonial robes and smiling like he had already won. Jake's semifinal opponent was Akuma Peterson, a human fighter he did not recognize from any previous competitions. Peterson was tall and muscular with glowing red eyes that suggested extensive cybernetic enhancement. He moved with mechanical precision and showed no emotion or recognition when Jake entered the arena. "Ladies and gentlemen," the tournament announcer called out, "our semifinal match features Jake Rodriguez of Earth against Akuma Peterson, also representing humanity. The winner will face M. Bison Kane himself in tomorrow's championship match. Jake realized he was looking at one of Kane's enhanced soldiers. Peterson had once been human, but now he was something else. A weapon designed to look like a person. The fight would not just be about advancing to the finals. It would be about proving that humanity's strength came from their hearts and minds, not from cybernetic enhancements. The bell rang, and Peterson attacked with inhuman speed and power. But Jake noticed something in the enhanced fighter's movements. Tiny hesitations and slight imperfections that suggested the original personality was still buried, somewhere inside the mechanical programming. "Remember who you were," Jake said as he dodged a crushing blow. "Remember what it felt like to be human." For just a moment, Peterson's glowing eyes flickered, and Jake saw confusion in his expression. The enhanced soldier paused as if struggling with conflicting commands. In that moment of hesitation, Jake saw his chance to reach the real person trapped inside the cybernetic shell. Jake's words seemed to reach something deep inside Peterson's modified mind. The enhanced soldier stopped his attack and stared at his own metal hands as if seeing them for the first time. Programming fought against buried memories, while Jake waited to see which would win. "I remember flying," Peterson said in a voice that sounded more human than machine. "I remember the stars and the feeling of freedom. What did they do to me?" "They tried to take away your humanity," Jake replied carefully. "But they failed. You are still in there, still fighting." Peterson's glowing eyes dimmed as his original personality reasserted control over the cybernetic systems. "My name is Alex Peterson. I was a pilot with the Colonial Defense Force. Kane captured MI 6 months ago, after I won the Titan Championship." He looked around the arena with growing awareness. This tournament is a trap. The crowd was confused by the sudden stop in fighting, but Jake used the opportunity to explain Peterson's situation to the broadcast audience. Millions of viewers across the galaxy learned about Kane's prisoner conversion program, while security forces tried unsuccessfully to cut the live transmission. Kane himself appeared at the edge of the arena, wearing powered armor that made him look like a metal giant. His voice boomed through speakers as he addressed the confused spectators. "Technical difficulties have ended tonight's match early. The tournament will continue tomorrow with new opponents." Kane pointed a weapon at Jake. "Mr. Rodriguez has been disqualified for unsporting conduct." "I don't think so," Jake called back. "According to tournament rules, I won this match when my opponent yielded. That means I advance to face you in the finals tomorrow." The crowd began chanting Jake's name while Kane's security forces surrounded the arena. But they were outnumbered by spectators from dozens of species who had come to see fair competition, not corporate manipulation. Tournament officials confirmed that Jake had technically won the match and would face Kane in the championship. Meanwhile, Chun-Li's team reached the weapon control room deep in the station's core. The energy cannon was massive, built into the station's main power grid, and capable of destroying entire star systems. Countdown timers showed it would fire during tomorrow's finals match, when media attention was at its peak. "We need to disable the firing mechanism without destroying the station," Chun-Li told her team. "Millions of innocent people live here, and they do not deserve to die for Kane's crimes." Rue arrived with the rescued prisoners just as alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Kane had discovered their rescue operation and was sending enhanced soldiers to stop them. The meditation master positioned himself between the approaching enemies and the prisoners, prepared to hold them off while the others escaped. "Go," he told Chun-Li. "I will delay them as long as possible." The battle in the corridors lasted for hours, as enhanced soldiers fought against rescued prisoners and their alien allies. Species that had been enemies for centuries worked together against Kane's mechanical warriors. The fighting spread throughout the lower levels while tournament spectators above remained unaware of the life and death struggle happening beneath their feet. Jake spent the night preparing for his final match against Kane. Amy helped him analyze video recordings of Kane's previous fights. looking for weaknesses in his technique and armor. Charlie worked with station technicians to ensure the championship match would be broadcast without interference. Kane is strong and well protected, but he has one major weakness, Amy observed. He has never fought anyone who refused to give up. All his previous opponents eventually accepted defeat when the odds seemed impossible. That won't be a problem, Jake said. I learned how to fight impossible odds 3 years ago. The championship match took place in the main arena before the largest audience in tournament history. Spectators filled every seat, while billions more watched on live broadcasts across the galaxy. Kane entered wearing his massive powered armor that gleamed with weapon systems and energy shields. He looked more like a walking tank than a fighter. Jake walked into the arena wearing simple clothes and carrying no weapons or enhancement gear. The contrast was obvious to everyone watching. David versus Goliath, human determination against corporate power, natural ability against artificial enhancement. This is your last chance to surrender, Kane announced through his armor speakers. Join my organization, and I will spare your life. Refuse, and you will become another casualty in the march toward galactic order. I have a better offer, Jake replied. Surrender now, and maybe you will live long enough to stand trial for your crimes. The match began with Kane attacking like a force of nature. His powered armor enhanced his speed and strength beyond human limits, while energy weapons fired continuously from his shoulders and arms. Jake dodged and rolled, using the arena's obstacles to avoid the devastating attacks. But Jake was not just fighting Kane. He was fighting for every human who had been told they were not strong enough, smart enough, or important enough to matter in the galaxy. He was fighting for Amy and Peterson and all the other victims of Kane's experiments. Most importantly, he was fighting to prove that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology, but their refusal to accept defeat. As the fight continued, Jake began to notice patterns in Kane's attacks. The powered armor was incredibly advanced, but it followed programmed combat routines. Kane fought like his enhanced soldiers, with mechanical precision but without creativity or adaptation. You fight like a machine, Jake called out, as he avoided another energy blast. Did you enhance yourself so much that you forgot how to be human? Kane's response was to activate more weapon systems, filling the arena with explosions and energy beams. But the increased firepower made him slower and less maneuverable. Jake used this against him, leading Kane into positions where his own weapons could not target effectively. The turning point came when Jake managed to get close enough to grab onto Kane's armor. The corporate executive tried to shake him off, but Jake held on and began dismantling weapon systems with his bare hands. Each disabled weapon made Kane weaker, while the crowd cheered louder. This is impossible, Kane snarled as another weapon system sparked and died. You are just one human, with no enhancements. You cannot defeat superior technology. Watch me, Jake replied and ripped out the armor's main power coupling. Kane's armor began shutting down as backup systems failed, one by one. The corporate executive found himself fighting without artificial enhancement for the first time in years. He was strong and well-trained, but he had forgotten how to adapt when plans went wrong. Jake's final attack was simple and decisive. He used Kane's own momentum against him, sending the armored executive crashing into the arena wall. Kane's helmet cracked and fell away, revealing a face twisted with rage and disbelief. You have doomed yourself and your entire species, Kane gasped as medical teams entered the arena. My weapon will fire regardless of this match's outcome. Earth will burn, and humanity will be blamed for starting a galactic war. Your weapon is already disabled, Jake announced to the broadcast audience. While you were playing games up here, real heroes were stopping your doomsday device. Chun-Li Shao and her team destroyed your energy cannon an hour ago. The crowd erupted in celebration as news of Kane's defeat spread throughout the station. Enhanced soldiers throughout Shadaloo Prime began shutting down as their control signals were cut off. Rescued prisoners emerged from the lower levels to tell their stories to media crews and law enforcement officials. Kane's arrest was broadcast live across the galaxy as Galactic Federation security forces took him into custody. Evidence of his crimes was overwhelming, and his corporate backers quickly distanced themselves from the scandal. The tournament was suspended, while investigators examined every aspect of Shadaloo Corporation's operations. 3 days later, Jake stood on the observation deck of a passenger ship heading back toward Earth. Amy joined him at the viewport, where they watched Shadaloo Prime growing smaller in the distance. "So what happens now?" Amy asked. "You won the tournament, but there was no prize ceremony. No medal, no trophy, no alien technology." "I got something better," Jake replied. "I got proof that humans belong in this galaxy, not as subjects or servants, but as equals." Reports were already coming in from across human space. Colonial governments that had been bullied by alien corporations were standing up for themselves. Human traders were demanding fair prices for their goods. Earth Defense Force recruitment was at an all-time high as young people volunteered to protect their worlds. "The Galactic Federation wants to offer you a position," Amy said. "Ambassador for Human Affairs. You would represent our species in all official dealings with alien governments." Jake considered the offer. It would mean leaving his ship and his freedom to become a diplomat and politician. But it would also mean ensuring that what happened at Shadaloo Prime never happened again. "What about you?" he asked. "Still planning to go back to flying patrol missions?" Amy smiled. "Actually, I was thinking about something more interesting. Chun-Li offered me a job with Interpol Space Division. Hunting criminals across the galaxy sounds better than sitting in an office writing reports." Charlie Blake had already accepted a promotion to colonel and a position training the next generation of Earth Defense Force pilots. Rue returned to his meditation temple but promised to help if humanity ever needed his skills again. Even Peterson decided to stay on Earth for reconstructive surgery to remove his cybernetic implants. The ship carrying them home was filled with humans returning from the tournament. Some were fighters who had competed, others were spectators who had witnessed history being made. All of them carried the same message back to their communities. Humanity had proven itself worthy of respect in the galaxy. Jake's final decision came as Earth appeared in the viewport, blue and white and beautiful against the black of space. This was what he had fought for. This was what made all the pain and struggle worthwhile. "Tell the Galactic Federation I accept their offer," he said to Amy. "But I do it my way. No fancy uniforms, no political games, just honest representation for honest people." Amy nodded. "I think they will agree to those terms. After what you did at Shadaloo Prime, most alien governments are eager to stay on humanity's good side." The ship docked at Luna Station, where crowds of reporters and government officials waited to greet the returning heroes. Jake looked out at the faces in the crowd and saw hope where there had once been resignation. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not through conquest or submission, but through courage and determination. As they walked toward the docking bay, Jake thought about all the fights he had won and lost over the years. This tournament had been different because it was not about personal glory or prize money. It was about proving that even the smallest and weakest could stand up to the largest and strongest when they refused to surrender. The galaxy would remember the human who defeated impossible odds, not with superior technology, but with an unbreakable spirit. That was a lesson worth fighting for, and a victory worth celebrating across the stars.